A room 10 by 8 by K.S. Duggal. The story begins with Mrs. Malik talking to an architect and insisting that this room might be 10 by 8. Mr. and Mrs. Malik are constructing a new house in New Delhi, and the architect is engaged to make a plan of the house, and Mrs. Malik is insisting again and again that I want a particular room to be 10 by 8. The architect cannot understand the purpose. Now the architect says that, madam, this is a storeroom. And Mrs. Malik replies, it's okay, but right now I want it to be the room of my mother-in-law, and after her death, we will convert it into a storeroom. And this is approved by Mr. Malik also, as they think that the storeroom should be spacious so that they can move all the trunks and objects freely. So at last it was decided that the room adjacent to the kitchen should be 10 by 8. The construction started. Mrs. Malik began to supervise the construction work. She began to talk to the neighbors there, making them friends and making all the plans that I would buy new furniture also for this new house. Now Mr. Malik is a government officer, and he is always transferred from one place to another, and that is disturbing the education of the children. And now Mrs. Malik wants to settle down here in Delhi, and she plans that even if her husband is now again transferred to any other place, she would stay here in New Delhi with her children. And unfortunately, the house was acquired by the government to establish a bank there, and Mr. Malik was again transferred to a new place. In a way, Mrs. Malik was happy that okay, they are transferred from here, and the house acquired by the government, because they will get the regular rent of the house, and there would be no problem. When Mr. Malik was again transferred to Delhi, their son was remained to be married, and Mr. Malik did not get the chance to live in the house, and unfortunately he died before that. Ultimately the house was released by the government, and now they were planning to shift into the new house. There was a daughter-in-law in the house also. Now Mr. Malik's son was married, and they were living in a rented house for the time being in New Delhi, and Monday was the auspicious day to shift to the new house. But it had been raining incessantly since morning, and in the evening they shifted. Now while driving in the car, Mrs. Malik noticed a few strange things. She remembered her hardships while the construction was going on, and she saw her daughter-in-law sitting at the back seat and doing the makeup, painting her lips, and she was really surprised. She could not understand the ways of the modern girls, that when they are shifting to their own house, what was the need of doing all this makeup. And there was one more thing in the daughter-in-law which that she didn't like, that she used to talk to the husband in English. Now Mrs. Malik learned all the ways of modern life, but she could not pick up in English. Now suddenly it occurred to Mrs. Malik that the house, there was a figure of made by the architect in the plan, and Mrs. Malik thought that this was the figure of my daughter-in-law, because in the figure the lady was wearing the maroon colored sari, and Mrs. Malik didn't like these loud colors. So these were the thoughts in her mind, and there were some anxious moment also. They reached the house and the daughter-in-law rushed inside the house. The son forgot to take the mother inside, and she made an excuse, Mrs. Malik, that these evening drive made her lazy. But the comment she heard, which caused the real trouble in her heart, that the daughter-in-law was suggesting to the son that this room 10 by 8 would be a room temporary for your mother. And now you can understand, because this was the plan of Mrs. Malik to shift her own grandmother in that house, and ultimately it came to her destiny. So we say that as you sow, so shall you reap. So the story talks about that, how we misbehave with elderly people in our families.